Okay, we're going to call to order the financial meeting tonight at 6:32 p.m. If everyone can please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Right behind you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, an executive session was held at 6:15 this evening. If we could please have a roll call.
Go right down line. Mr. Paulus. Here. Mr. Lovelace. Mr. Lovelace. Here. Mrs. Knight.
Here.
Ms. Ranke.
Here.
Mr. Brady. Here. Ms. Bloss.
Here.
Mr. Leppish. Here. Mr. Townsend. Here. Ms. Stewart.
Ms. Stewart is watching from home tonight on the live stream. I just want to welcome everybody from the public who's here, as well as anybody who may be watching on the live stream. Putting this session together tonight just to look at the finances as we start preparing the budget for the upcoming school year. I want to thank Mr. Chappell ahead of time here for the work he put into the presentation. We will go through, ask any questions you have as we go through that part of it. And if anybody has any questions from the audience before we're done, you're more than welcome to ask.
All right.
I'll stand. I'm used to it. All right. Thank you, Dr. Keebler. Thank you to the board for coming out and for the public coming out this evening. Throughout this presentation, we'll be touching base on real estate taxes, the district's need to make a decision on which methodology we'll be using for next year, the preliminary look at the 26-27 budget, in a 5-year financial forecast. Starting off, a preliminary 26-27 revenue budget. I just want to note to start, Governor Shapiro delivered his proposed budget today. So upon review, I'll have some slight changes to state revenue that I will highlight next week during our board meeting. Little uptick in our revenue from what I saw, but nothing to move the needle, unfortunately. You'll see in this slide, there are 4 different revenue options. The first 2 columns are based on the recommendation of raising taxes by 5.1%, but these are broken down by the use of method A2 versus A1. The last 2 columns represent scenarios with no tax increase and provide a breakdown of the A2 and A1 method. As shown above, our local revenue and total revenue would increase by approximately $252,000 with a 5.1% increase. So as I stated, we're really going to be highlighting tonight the $16.6 million revenue. That's what you'll be seeing throughout mainly.
Mr. Kaplan, just to explain to the people, as you did to me in a executive session, difference between the A2 and A1.
We'll get into that right here, Mr. Brady. So taking a deeper dive into the real estate portion, getting into the A2 versus A1. So as Mr. Brady noted, A1 is currently what the district has been using for numerous years. I presented back in October the use of possibly A2-3. This gives the district the ability to have uniformity millage and assessments between the 2 counties. So overviewing this slide, our preliminary millages in the revenue are subject to change due to updated data provided by each county. We get more locked in data when it comes to the assessments and the market values closer to June. I'm still waiting for Armstrong County actually to provide me with preliminary data. I had to use what we solidified at the last school year. And I've reached out numerous times and haven't heard anything from them, unfortunately. So overview of what the PDE system has given us under A2 with the increase, we would see a uniform millage and assessment for Leechburg area with a millage of 134. If we were to use A1, we would be looking at 71.29 mils and 174.84 mils for Westmoreland. If we were to not increase taxes and use the A2 method, so we would keep revenue stagnant from years prior, we'd be looking at millage of 128.29. If we were to continue to use A1, it'd be dropping to 68.25 in Armstrong and going up to 167.39 in Westmoreland.
I have another, I'll be asking a lot of questions, I'm sure.
Yep, go right ahead.
But with the 5.1% increase, that gives us about an additional 300,000.
252,000 in revenue.
And what's a mill worth now? Is it still around 75,000 or so?
Oh,
It used to be about 75 grand, so I figured we're like about 3.5 for a mill increase, you know.
that's a good question. I do not know off the top of my head.
Find out what,
Especially because of the change that I'm looking to do. I was just mainly highlighting our total revenue collection of, we've been at 4.9, and with that 5.1% increase, it would get us to 5.1 budgeted for real estate revenue.
Jake, if I can add, just so the board's aware, just looking at numbers so we know parcels of why those differences are on there. The Leechburg Borough has 1,087 parcels. Gilpin has 1,728, which is a combined 2,815 compared to 716 in Westmoreland. So as that goes through, that's why the millage is lower in Armstrong County, because there's way more people using that millage of that versus. So that shows why there's such a big jump at times when you look at those numbers. Yeah, and these are the last ones. I'm not sure they're within, but we have 1,087 in Leechburg, 1,728 in Gilpin, and 716 in West Leechburg.
Thank you, Dr. Keebler. Taking a little further dive into the real estate tax bill, this slide was discussed back in October. It's important to show the change from 2017, 2018. So when assessed values were higher and generating more revenue for the district, and if I recall correctly, that was the last time the school district implemented an actual tax increase. Due to assessments changing, that's a primary driver for the fluctuating millage rates throughout the years, kind of piggybacking off what Dr. Keebler said there. So with those millages fluctuating, in 2017-18, we had assessed values for both counties that were higher than where they are now. Therefore, the millage was able to be lower, except for Armstrong, because there was a tax increase that year. So to put it simple, when assessed value decreases, the millage is going to have to go up, or vice versa. So in here, I'm just highlighting where we were at in 2017, 2018. I really want you guys to see the assessed values have dropped, and that's the reason for these fluctuating millages. Here's a sample of 25-26 using the A1 method, which we had board approved in our 25-26 budget. It's just a sample tax bill using a $100,000 market value home, just to keep things consistent there. And then if we were to utilize the A2 method in the 26-27 school year, just a preliminary overlook. Obviously, millage is subject to change. Assessed values are subject to change due to common level ratios. We'd be looking at about $1,100 a tax bill on a market value home of $100,000. This would bring uniformity between Westmoreland and Armstrong County, and it would show about $125.67 increase in Armstrong County per $100,000 market value home. Getting into a little bit of the revenue without boring you too much this evening. Some revenue drivers for us next year. We have a great opportunity from the approval that we made with the Pittsburgh Soccer Club rental to bring in additional rental revenue from them using the football field for soccer practices and games. We have a $10,000 budget in there. We also have the opportunity from revenue from other liaisons. We have 57,000 in there. This is obviously subject to change or removal completely. This is stating if we were to bring in 3 students from outside school districts to attend the Leechburg area emotional support classroom at $19,000 a student. It's a great possible revenue driver, but unfortunately, some things can change where this might have to come out. That's just discussions moving forward as we go through this budget process. As I stated earlier.
Is that, I'm happy, is that in addition to what we already have in the class? That's outside of.
Yes,
right?
Yeah, so that'd
we keep the numbers we have in there right now consistent, but it would
So
be,
that's projected then?
yes, that's
Yeah.
all, that's ultimately our goal, is we brought it in to get our kids back, but also to fill the classroom, with that.
It's a great savings
That's
opportunity.
like 5 or 6 then.
Yeah,
It's a great savings opportunities for outside school districts as well, because we see placements that cost over $100,000. And this is a great alternative for their students, and
Yeah.
especially for the district to save money.
just to follow up on that, we do have one, an outside placement that we are projecting to come back next year to be added for a 4th one of our own. But right now, we're paying close to $100,000 for that student in an outside placement. So bringing that back, that would bring a savings in on that.
Dipping into the state revenue a little bit, these numbers, obviously, the state released some different projections. This is what I had originally budgeted. Ready to Learn was spot on. Basic Ed and Special Ed, those two total together, we're seeing maybe a $48,000 increase in what you see on the screen currently. Property tax relief, I have consistent from last year what we received for homestead exclusions. That's subject to possibly going up. I'm waiting for the state to release that. Federal revenue, it's really important to highlight here. The access line, I have budgeted $327,000, and there's a big note next to it. So we had budgeted $300,000 this school year in 25-26. That's telling the state that we would possibly be pulling that funding to put towards our revenue this year. I'm hoping that we don't have to go that route this school year to close a deficit. That's the primary reason you would draw those access funds. If we do have to go that route this school year, that number will be coming out, and that will drastically change our revenue number, unfortunately. So
On the access funds, I mean, they stay there. If we don't use them at all, it
They-
stays there for next year. It rolls over.
it rolls over.
And that. What's the drawbacks of taking out of that versus not taking out of it?
So the drawback is that money technically is just sitting within the AIU. It's not sitting in a bank account of ours to be accruing interest. So that's a downfall. But the thing about access is, some of us business managers say we call it a slush fund. It's kind of the hideaway of, if you have to close a deficit come year end, you have that opportunity. I'm hoping we don't have to do that this year, so we can have that in our back pocket next year or years moving forward.
And that could, we could get more access funds next year too, correct?
Yep, we continually do our quarterly access reports and our annual access report. So we charge those allowable costs off, and we get quarterly reimbursements and then our annual contribution on a yearly basis.
So we could draw something out of it if we have to.
Yeah, if we have to. It doesn't have to be that full 300,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been looking through history and records. There's been access drawdowns within the last 10 years, numerous ones, just incremental ones. Getting into our expenditure budget for next year, which is definitely subject to change this early on. Our overall expenses are at 17.6 million, but I wanted to highlight these both by the object and function code, which you see up on the screen. The object code allows you to see that salary and benefits make up about 69% of the budgeted expenses. In the 500s objects, the large sum of that 2.5 million comes from cyber charter tuition, as well as the outside district placements we've talked about. In the function code, the 5,000s, that's where our debt service payment is located, but that also contains $350,000 that I have set aside in budgetary reserve for unforeseen expenses such as placements or new cyber charter enrollments. It's an unfortunate situation that we have to put that large of a sum in there. We're seeing it firsthand this year with our cyber charter enrollments especially. Dr. Keebler, if you can correct me, I believe we've seen 12 since the beginning of this school year that we didn't have budgeted for. So we're going to have to pull from our current budgetary reserve in 25-26 for that expense. Luckily, we got a little state relief. Thank you for that, state governor. And
Is it possible, I guess, on the large ones, like on the 300 to 500, 600 to 900, to get some detail on that, like for items over 50,000 or something like that? I know the 500s is a charter school, correct?
yeah, so 562 exactly contains the cyber charters. And then in the other 500 object is tuition for our placements and of that things of that nature. So if there's specific ones that you would like to see in the 300, 400, et cetera category, please let me know and I can pull that to have available Wednesday when we meet again.
And I can send out the email that has our outside
Yeah, no
placements.
rush in that.
With, it's a report we get monthly from, there's more on that part of it. It shows our cyber charter students as well as our place students on there to be able to see where those at, but that's where that money comes from on there. It's the students are placed as well as cyber charter. We're right around $1 million right now for cyber charter. So hopefully the
luckily we
policy
can
we
take care.
approved last month, we'll be able to work with them and get some of them students back here to save some money as well.
I'd just like to make a comment, on the charter schools. Charter schools aren't doing what we're doing here for the public, having a budgetary meeting. Charter schools do not show the budgets to the public. They don't have to show them to the public. They can spend it on whatever they want to. And I think it's wrong, but it can be done. If you looked at our deficit of like 1.2 million or $900,000, if we took the charter money and we took the transportation for private schools and so forth, we'd be able to balance the budget. A comment from me is, we live in Leechburg, we live in West Leechburg, we live in Gilpin, we pay taxes, to this community. We send our kids to this community. And if people want to send them to a charter school, private school, work from home, whatever, that's fine, but I don't think we should have to pay for that. That's just, I think a lot of people do that. It's a political thing right now. I went online, I was teaching an economics class before, went online and asked what politicians from the state, representatives and senators, you guys could Google it, which one get lobbyist money from the charter schools. It was the one person that started the one charter school, I had his name down there, he donates about $1 million or so to lobbyists. So, I mean, there's a lot of lobbyists, there's putting a lot of money into the legislature to keep the charter schools reimbursed with our tax money.
And
Well,
just-
it'd be one thing if they could cap the tuition, but being that they can just put the tuition to whatever they want is the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, we
They
shouldn't have to
tried-
pay
They
any.
were trying to
yes,
do a
yeah,
cap
yeah.
on a tuition.
But if you Google it, you'll get people's names, you'll get the,
That would make a big
how many people donate to lobbyists. There's a lot of money going out there to keep the charter school funding from us, the local communities, to pay the taxes.
And just to add, the current litigation we're in right now, we have a cyber charter school that, has about $500 million equity at hand. They're showing about a 4% passing rate on state testing, which when you put that in perspective, we send 50 kids there, 2 of them are passing. It's kind of disgusting if you think about the accountability, and the charters haven't been approved by the state. So hopefully, as we work through that, we'll get some more relief off of those numbers as well.
Yeah, and there's a new charter school, I think there's buying a building in the Pittsburgh area for over $500,000. So, I mean, it's just, AI is great whenever you Google.
Getting into the thick of the expenses a little bit, we'll start with debt service. So currently in that 5,000 function, we have our debt service principal and interest from our 2017 bond that we had taken out. That totals $513,400. If we were to explore that new $2 million bond, it'd be an additional $82,193 in debt service, taking the debt service payment in 26-27 to $595,500. $593. Getting into medical, a big ticket item here at Leechburg area, unfortunately. The Roshini Group informed us at our previous meeting in January, we're projecting an increase of 12.88% going into next year. That's going to take our medical insurance cost to $2.3 million. And just so everybody's aware, we have about, I believe, 76 people that receive medical coverage in the district. So for 76 people, it's $2.3 million. That's an astronomical number, if you ask me. Well, it's quite staggering from 25, 26, and going into next school year. If you take those two percentages, it's 32.5% increase the last 2 years in medical coverage alone, because we faced a 19.69% going into this school year.
And I'll add to that, Mr. Chapla, we are, as one of the districts 13 in the consortium, we've been at the highest percentage of that. So some districts are lower than that. But last year we were at 19.67 and we're looking at a 12.88. But we are the highest of the districts on there just by going with our usage of that part, how the consortium works. We pay what we pay into it. If you're over that, you get a percentage. But even in the best case scenario, the districts with the lowest increase is still an 8% increase.
Getting into our tuition cost. So currently we have 50 students enrolled in cyber charters. They're all actually in cybers right now. Right now we're projecting potentially 41 students enrolled. We're hoping that the 9 students that are graduate eligible are going to graduate. So that's taking our projected tuition to $834,000. And as Mr. Brady said, I understand school choice, but it's very important for Leechburg taxpayers to know that $800,000 of their tax dollars are going out the door for 41 students to attend schools that are underperforming.
Yeah, and we have, I guess, Dr. Kaber and Mr. Kaplan, we have our own we have our charter school here that the students could come here and would reduce the money that we owe out. You know, so it would be, if anyone knows anybody in charter schools, try to talk them into coming to our charter school, which saves us a lot of money.
And I can add to that, our platform for cyber education will be increased next year, as Dr. Vargo brought in the Canvas platform that our teachers are working with right now, looking at 6 through 12 on that part of it. It'll be much more accessible as well as user-friendly for the students that are in there, as well as anybody else with that.
You guys have some good programs coming up.
How much is the cost per student for tuition in Leechburg? Building.
Right now, it's $4,000 to come in from outside.
How much does it cost for the most expensive cyber school that we pay for the student?
Special ed this year is $29,000 a student.
Okay, for a kid that isn't. What's the?
For regular ed, that is $15,000, almost 16.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was part of when we lowered that a few years back to try to get them in. It's something we are going to revisit because we looked at the numbers where that was a flat rate if someone wants to come here paying tuition. We have a few with that, but then if there's additional needs with that, they would pay those needs as well if they want to come in, so that it was on that. But that is something that is out there for families to join us.
No, what I'm saying is what is the most expensive cyber student we pay for now? What's the top cost?
29,000. It's
Yeah,
set by the
29,000.
state.
29,000
Yeah.
for a special needs. child.
Yes.
For a child that's not special needs, it's.
15.
Almost
it's the most
16,000.
expensive,
Yes.
15.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're balanced out on that by the state, gives us what that number is.
Right, right.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that, our tuition calculations for cyber and for charter schools comes through the PD 363 form that comes off our budgeted expenditures. So, for example, for our 25-26 tuition cost, it's based off our 24-25 budgeted expenditures. And that, luckily, we got a little bit of state reform, so we have additional items that were taken out of cyber charters expenditures that go towards the cost of the tuition. So we did get a couple $1,000 savings from the state reform we saw in November.
And that was part of what they were allowing us to put in. I want to thank Mr. Chapla for putting items where they need to be instead of putting the general part. By what law allows them in there, it allows it to be deducted off that top number, which saves us some money.
Yeah, like for example, we have in prior years' budgets, there's transportation expenses that are at the 1110 level just for general building for elementary or high school. If we move that, which I already have for next year, into the 2,700 function, that's deducted out of your PD 363. So it's a matter of just budgeting things, kind of playing a game. I mean, you're budgeting it correctly because it is transportation. It's a 2,700 function, but just diving into things like that to move it to places where it's going to help our tuition cost years down the road.
Dr. Keebler, Mr. Chapla, you said the $4,000 were for students that would say, let's just hypothetically say that live in Apollo Ridge School District, but if they want to come to Leechburg, they'd pay $4,000.
That is
What's the cost of an in-house student that lives in the district, just like a regular day-to-day?
That's what
Normal.
I was trying to ask.
Yeah, that's,
In
I thought
that.
that's what it was.
Yeah, it kind of got.
Oh, so
hot.
our
That's
per
what
student-
If I was in
misunderstood
school
me.
right now, how much would it cost for me to attend the school district?
I don't have it here, but I want to say it's around, what's that?
I remember,
That's where they get that number
I
at.
thought it was like 12 to 15,000.
Yeah, it's about $15,000.
Okay. Yeah,
I can send it to you. I have it up in my office. I don't want
That's
to
a
quote a
state
number, but
that's a
Yeah.
state approved item as well.
yes. Yeah, that's,
Yeah, that's
I
what
get
I
what you
think
said.
you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
make.
yeah. Sorry.
We had a big miscommunication.
Sorry, Melanie, or Mrs. Snyder,
That's
excuse
why
me.
I was like, you were saying those numbers, and I'm like, wait, to me, that sounds like what we had. to do.
No, those would be if it,
Like, say, hypothetically, PA Cyber charges what per student per child, not question,
15,000.
but that is.
It's a little bit more than
that is
what,
Pass fail,
yes, there's no,
whether they log on.
yeah, I will thank the state legislators, not that they did a ton of it, still pushing for more, but they did allow us to take some off, and they also helped us with the attendance. So any student who is in truancy and has a truancy plan or anything like that, they're being denied. There is one that I will speak highly of, that a local school district had a kid try to enroll there, and they sent a letter to that family and said, due to your attendance issues, you are not allowed to enroll here at this cyber charter school. So those steps are helping with that, because that was a lot of the older kids that were jumping into cyber charter. We couldn't get them to school. We'd end up down the magistrate, and we were stuck between a rock and a hard place of pushing them to get them here, and then they just call a number, and now they're cyber charter school, and we don't have them anymore on that
So
part.
some of those things taking place since they were trying to negotiate to, what was it?
They were trying to get 8,000 flat. They didn't go there, but they got, like I said, it cut some of those 363s. They put some attendance pieces in. They get a check-in monthly with it. So it's a starting point, as I said. They've come a long way from where they were at, but there's still a long way to go on that part of it. Yes.
Oh, you're ahead of that.
But we'll thank them. We'll take what we got on that
Right,
to
right.
help.
Absolutely.
I can't remember if I hit this outside placements, looking at a little over 500,000 for that. A couple other pieces I want to note. Peaser's employer contribution for next year has gone down a tick from 34% this year to 33.59%. We also have ongoing contractual negotiations that will change things as well. And another important note that we've already hit on, that 350,000 set aside in budgetary reserve.
And there's no suggested increase to the budgetary reserve in the budget for next year. No,
I do not have one right now.
It'd be difficult to do that.
If
We'll be
if we,
taking out of this one maybe, yeah.
yeah, if we start to spiral a little bit with potential tuitions, then maybe it'll go up. I know we have a couple cases of potential placements already for next year, and they're not even in the district yet. So that could change that 350,000. It all depends on what the parents' wishes are coming in to the district.
And I can add, some of those costs are just by law of what goes on. We have some students who are transient with that, who may become homeless on that because of a family situation. So we're putting busing on to bring them in from outside district back to us. It's split with their home district with that, as well as some placement students who have moved into the district who are already placed as we move through that process till we get into control of an IEP or something like that for that placement. We're still paying those costs as well.
Getting into our overview of revenues versus expenditures, with our 4 different revenues shown in slide 2, you can see the outlook for next year is not looking great. Even with a tax raise and taking out the bond, we are upside down 993,000. Factoring in if we don't touch that 350,000, which you hope and pray you don't have to, our projected loss would come in around 643,000. That's with the 5.1% increase. Just so you're all aware, my goal is to get that down to 200,000 to 300,000, that projected loss at year end outside of budgetary reserve if not used. That number makes me feel a little more comfortable. It's an unfortunate situation a lot of small schools are in right now. State funding hasn't been increasing a lot. Expenditures are continuing to rise, of course. I know a lot of other districts that are in the same position we are right now, looking at 850 to $1 million plus in deficit next year. Theoretically, I just wanted to throw this in there as well. If the bond was not taken out next year, that loss number goes down to 561,000. I also have to throw in there, if there's no tax increase, it is much worse with a projected deficit over 1.2 million or a potential loss of 895,000 if the reserve's not used. So
Is there any benefit from taking out of access funds in the budgetary, the budgetary reserve? Or is it better just to go from one account? There's 350,000 there. The access funds is like 320 or something like that. Is it better to keep both alive and take part out of each one to get to 300 and some?
So the reason I like to entertain both is because having that access in there gives you the ability to pull down what you feel you might need to. And with budgetary reserve, as we've seen this year, there's so many unforeseen additional expenditures that come in, and another allowable deduction on the PD 363 for your cyber charter tuitions is money you have put in budgetary reserve. So it's kind of gaming the system a little bit there to help the tuition cost as well.
So as a budgetary reserve, is that like a appropriated general fund item? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to inform everyone of our general fund balance from June 30, 2021 to now. At the end of the 2021 school year, we were sitting at a $7.2 million fund balance. Each year it has deteriorated since then. At the end of this year, we could be sitting around 3.9 million, which is a $3.3 million decrease over 5 years. Of course, that happens with no new revenues and increasing expenditures. That will happen. I know there's been a couple capital projects that were taken out of the fund balance through that time, but it's important to note when you do things like that, take out of your fund balance, you have to figure out how you're going to generate revenue or control expenditures to build your fund balance back. And so far that hasn't been completed here. So that's steps we need to start to take. Although taxes have not been raised, it also shows how little the state has given to Leechburg area on a year-to-year basis.
So is there a reason taking $2 million out to balance the budget last year? I mean,
That was our capital project for the boilers, the 1.84 million. That's what we paid for those for.
for the what?
The boiler system that we put into this building. Same thing with that difference between 21-22 and 22-23. That was the previous capital project that they moved it from there. It was in the general fund for that part as well.
So in a sense, rather than the Leechburg area moving surpluses from the general fund over to capital to pay for the projects, they just took them out of the general fund balance. So like when you look at 25-26, that's what was board approved back in June, the revenue and expenditures and the deficit that we're looking at. And a part of that 1.9 is 1.4 that was paying for the boiler project that was completed this year. So that's where you're getting our beginning fund balance from 5.9 down to 3.9.
Is there a guideline that they have, like a certain percentage of your budget, of your expenditures should be in a general fund, like 3%, 4%?
So the smaller your budgeted expenditures are, the higher the percentage is in your fund balance allowability. I've never seen the case where the state has smacked you on the wrist for having things too high. There might be the flag within the AFR system when you're completing that for your annual audit that, hey, your unassigned fund balance is a little high and you just need to move that over to an assigned.
Right.
Just a little teaching point while we're on assigned, unassigned, all that good stuff for fund balances. So your unassigned fund balance, that is just money that you have sitting there. You don't have anything you're putting it towards. It's just what you have. Committed restricted. So you'll see in 24-25, that 1.4, that committed restricted is paying for the project that we paid out of 25-26 for the boilers. So that is what's going to be removed. Assigned 2.4, that is a flexible, there's flexibility there. You assign things for such as healthcare increases, if PSERs were to continue to go up, things of that nature. But you have you're not bound to that number. You can put that towards your unassigned if you have to. It's flexible. Non-spendable, obviously what it says, non-spendable, that's just what you have to do there. Anybody have any questions on the fund balance stuff?
Yeah, no, I mean, the fund balance is decreasing, we've held, even when I was on the board, they held with no increase in taxes, which I know at one point I even proposed we should be increasing like 1% a year, so it's not as high. It's trying to get it to 5.5% a year. It should have been increased in the last 3-4 years, a point a year or so, but.
Exactly, and that's the unfortunate thing you'll continue to see here is when you go such a long period of time without raising your taxes, you're going to have to bear the brunt with large increases to make up for that lost time. Then you set yourself up for future that you have those incremental increases down the road, which is the plan and process you want to be on when it comes to that. So the district's prepared for it, residents are prepared for it. So getting into the next slide here, with important decisions needing to be made, it's important to forecast them out and not take things year by year. This is a 5-year model. And you'll see in 26-27, the revenue and expenditures we've discussed prior. This model shows if the district were to raise taxes in 26-27, but not any year after that. The expenditures contain taking out the $2 million bond and debt service, so that additional $82,000 for next year. But that also contains your debt service payments the next 5 years as well in there, which increase it by 100-some thousand. So you're in the 625 in debt service in those years. Unfortunately, as Dr. Keebler had said earlier, we're at the top of the scale when it comes to the medical increases on a year-to-year basis. So we have to factor in 16% increases to our medical insurance in 27, 28, and beyond. There's 1% increases in there to our total cost of cyber charter tuition and outside placement tuitions. And in this model, there's no staff reduction. So this assumes status quo unemployment, that no employees were to leave the district and that everything stays the same through those 5 years with employment. So as you can see, this is unfortunately alarming to me that regardless, so in 26-27, we'll start there. That 16.6 is the revenues if we were to raise those taxes by 5.1%, and our expenditures are that 17.6. So that's our surplus deficit of 993. And if we were to not use our 350, that gets it down to 600 some. So you see, it's another year taking a hit to the fund balance. That would possibly drop it by another $1 million. 27, 28, I just wanted to show, okay, hey, let's raise taxes this year, but if we don't do it in years follow, the implications that has as well because of the continuing increases in expenditures, but not keeping up with our revenues. So this is getting into a different scenario to try to help the district's financial position. You'll see in 26-27, there's some slight adjustment to our expenditures we have discussed prior. This model is showing if the district were to raise taxes in 26-27 and 4% each year after that. The expenditures contain taking on the $2 million bond debt service. There's one change that comes from medical coverage that would be effective in 26-27 school year. And then on top of that, you have your 16% increases in 27-28 and beyond. Another change comes within our transportation costs that are ongoing discussions with our vendor going into next school year and the subsequent years after that. And it's the same as the last slide with our 1% increases for cyber charter tuition, outside placement tuitions, as well as no staff reductions. And when you're doing a model like this, you obviously have slight incremental increases to certain things of nature, like your supplies, your operating costs, like your utilities. Speaking with Mr. Cericio the other day, unfortunately, electric costs are up for everybody, and we're seeing it here at the district. So that's a large number that we had to beef up in the budget for next year, and that's reflected throughout this model as well, the continuing increases to electricity costs. But with certain projects, like bringing in new windows, it helps your efficiency, so there is some energy savings with that. The district's done a great job so far hitting on the key points for energy savings with windows and lighting already. So under this 26-27 deficit, that number drops to 620,000. And if we factor out not using the $350,000 in reserve, we could have a potential deficit of 270,000, which is a little bit better of a position. We're getting into that window where I would like to be. One more scenario for you guys this evening. Some more adjustments within 26-27 to our expenditures. This model shows if the district were to raise taxes in 26-27 and 4% each year after. The scenario eliminates taking on the new bond debt service. And the other expenditure points in the last scenario are the same in this one. This takes the potential deficit to 537,000, and if that 350 weren't used from the reserve, it would be a potential deficit of 187,000. So with all this, I would be remiss to tell you all that the district is in a sound position to take on additional debt without a long-term plan in mind. Is my recommendation we must first evaluate our other big ticket expenditure items first before approving additional debt. I hope this presentation helped better understand our current position and that if action is not taken, things can be upside down very quickly. We need to figure out our best course to do what is necessary, but also be financially responsible. I thank you all for your time, and hopefully you all feel informed and aren't too bored after a lot of financial discussions this evening. If anybody has any discussion up here, we can start with that. And then we can open it up to our few members if there's any comment or discussion down there.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Chaplin.
Mr. Chaplin.
Thank you.
Just adding to that, I think the conversation that we've been clear about is looking at that $933,000 deficit. Over the next 2 to 3 months, we have to figure out a plan and project that. So the quicker we get that down closer to a balanced budget, the longer that projection will be there, because those are, it's just a compounded cost as those numbers stay that high. So as we look at that, we'll dig into those big ticket items. Where can we find savings at for the district to move forward to keep the facility up to date on what we need?
Just a quick question on the expenses, Mr. Chaplin. Did the bond issue would increase to like 83,000 a year, I think, or so, right? In that neighborhood.
So year one next year, it's 82,000. Subsequent years after that, it increases it by about 125,000, I believe. So it takes that total debt service from 513,000 up to about 625,000 and 27, 28 and beyond until that debt's paid off.
When we get the report back from him on all the numbers, who talked to us the last meeting, does that include, are there upfront legal costs? I mean, I think there's legal costs from the bond, from their attorney, and from our attorney, we have costs also. I mean, those are costs I'd like to see. If it's a $2 million bond, if it's a 5% fee, that's $100,000, which is significant to us. And what they're, from both sides, I think it'd be nice to see those dollar amounts?
I believe it was 5% is what McClure had in there, and that was for the full scope of the 7.5 or $7.9 million in work. And I want to say it was 70-some thousand for bond counsel,
7,000?
70-some thousand, 70-something, yeah, I believe. But I can get that number to you for
Yeah,
sure.
it'd just be nice to see the percentages and so forth from each one, just because it's not included, you know, that's additional upfront cost we'd have to pay for the bonds.
Could you explain again, and I'm sure I just want to make sure I understand this in and out. What again is contributing to a $2 million expenditure from 2024, 2025 for a 1 year's period? What's this 2 million? We have 16 million in expenditure for 24, 25, and we're increasing it by 2 million for 25 and 26. What exactly is contributing to that 2 million again? Is that all just,
That was the 1.4 in the HVAC project that was completed by McClure.
and what year was that? That was in,
The current year. So what we did was we budgeted, so it was a part of the budget, so the budget jumped up that much. We didn't have any revenue coming in, that's why it was short.
got it, okay.
And to hit on that, that 1.4 that we have budgeted in there, that jumps it to that 18 million, that 1.4 will become a deduction in our cyber charter tuition for the 26-27 school year, because it's based on the 25-26 budget. Because when you do facility improvements that fall under the 4,000 function code, that is a removable expenditure deduction from this cost, the calculation of cyber charter tuition.
Okay, and for a 5-year projection, we're up 4 million more. What exactly is contributing? Is that just the healthcare increases?
What was that one for?
Your 5-year projection, getting us to 2031, is up 4 million in expenditure. And I know you just went through the whole thing, but that's a lot. I mean, 4 million over 5-year time. What exactly is contributing to that?
I can just add on, so we had that 19% healthcare increase. This year it was $450,000. So if you did that over a 5-year period, there's 2 million right there. Part of it's that, and Mr. Chaplin can add to that, but just add into that. And the other piece with that 1.4 million we spent, it was actually a $1.8 million project. We used $350,000 from the previous year for our first payment on that project as well. So that came out of our funds that we spent from 24-25 for that first payment on that part of it. So that was part of the money being spent, that had we not put that into that project, it would have been in the fund balance to start last year, but we paid it ahead of time so we could start that project.
Yeah, so as you can see in 24-25, there was anticipation and expecting a surplus in revenue compared to expenditures in 24-25. As you see, we had a $257,000 surplus. So that's why, that was right when I first started in May. The project was already approved. And when McClure was beginning to invoice for the work, I saw that we were going to be bringing in a surplus. I felt that rather than beef up next year's expenditures even more for this school year,
Yeah.
we'll take it out of the potential surplus that we have in 24-25. So rather than
Going up about
So rather than
5%.
having a $500,000 or $600,000 surplus last school year, it's down to that 257 because I took 300 some out to make that first payment to McClure for the project to help the 25-26 budget.
So those numbers are, the costs will go up about 5% each year.
Correct.
And if the revenue goes up 5%, it's not
And-
making even really.
As we've been hitting on, and I've been hitting on since joining the district, medical is a huge cost driver for this district as a whole, and no employee contribution definitely hurts. I applaud the LEA for making the concessions to begin to contribute at the end of this contract that was agreed upon. So that's going to help down the road. So that's just some of the options that we have to review moving forward is employee contributions. I'm sure a lot of you pay for healthcare through your work. We offer the Cadillac of coverage right now, and it's unfortunately hurting us financially. So we just have to be mindful moving forward and make the right decisions. That one, benefit our employees, that they want to come here, they want to be here. It attracts new talent, but also has financial sustainability for all of us.
For the first general fund balance, you had the 5.1 tax increase and none after.
Mhm.
What it would look like. On the next two, where did you come up with 4% the years after?
4%, I felt was
Like, why wasn't it like 1, 2, 3, like what you did with yours?
4, I felt we were kind of in the mindset of, as I stated earlier, we have to be a little bit of aggressive to make up for lost time without raising them for so long. I've seen, and you can research this, Plum School District was in a similar situation where they went, I believe, 10 years without raising taxes. They drained their fund balance. They were scraping to make payroll. And I've been getting clobbered since with tax increases. So it's a matter of, fortunately, we're a smaller district. We can catch up quicker with our revenue as long as we're controlling our expenditures. Then we can get on that cycle of, okay, we're forecasting out. Come this year, we're going to have a 1% increase and then off for 2 years. We want to get to that point. So that's why I went with the aggressive approach of 4%, so we get caught up and then we can get on our scheduled plan.
Yeah, because if I remember correctly, when I got on the board, my last term that I served, it kind of happened like that too. There wasn't impact, there was nothing for so long, and then all of a sudden you get in your board and boom. And then who gets blamed? The board. So we're the bad guys now if it goes to 5, but the password isn't. You know what I mean? And that's what the public will look at and point fingers.
But
Not we didn't do a
Yeah.
0.5% or a 1% per year to gradually
And-
do something. You don't do it for so long, you just do.
And that's what we're trying to be as transparent as possible with this, because it is a long-term and it's short-term. In the past, when you go 8, 9 years without doing that, that's where you end up. So as we talk, that's what we present. Hopefully, we can come up with a plan to cut expenditures, which then impacts what those future costs would be and the increases would be. But projecting out of us not being able to control that right now, we have to play high on that. I would be hopeful that it would come through there. Ultimately, I hope the community opens up to see this part of that. It's our recommendation when we go through that. Unfortunately, it's my job, as well as Mr. Chaplain's, to inform the board of how we need to make decisions so that we can be financially responsible, as well as planning ahead so we can be sustainable as a district on that part.
And I never want to hit the point of raising taxes. That's one of the last levers you want to pull, of course. But for it to happen, unfortunately, it has to happen. That's a part of life. So we have to catch up. And for the district, obviously, it looks like a blemish. You're raising taxes 5.1%. But if you show the residents and the public that we're doing our best to also control our expenditures, so we're going to take care of you down the road, that we don't have to raise them continuously to an index or to an astronomical number, that helps the public understand that, okay, the district's not just spending frivolously. They're doing their part to control expenditures.
Yeah, 3.5%, 4% is about the inflation rate anyway.
And the 4% increase each year after, there's no deadline on that, and that's the 5-year. Because people are gonna ask that too.
That's through
You know,
5
they
years
may-
through 2031.
Yeah, and just to add, we have some other thoughts of bringing revenue in, but we can't count any of that ahead of time because there's no guarantees that that'll happen. So our hope is we can balance some of this out. If we cut our expenditures, increase some revenues on opportunities that we have, there'll be other opportunities there, but we want to be clear, none of that's guaranteed. So we want to give out the projections of where we're at currently with that, so that we have real numbers with that. Anything that is a bonus that we can increase revenue, if the state would come through, or if we can figure out a way with some of our planning to do that.
And of course, we can do our part as administration and you all as board members to advocate to the local state reps to look out for us as a district, to look out for smaller school districts out there as well. primarily for us, of course. I've seen firsthand what a good relationship from school board members with a local state rep can do for a school district. They help drive state funding to the school, and that comes through primarily the Ready to Learn block grant.
And, it sounds a little bit like gloom and doom, I guess, at times, but I think the administration is working on programs and working out ways to cut the cost and things to do in programs. So, this is sort of like black and white right now, but there's other things that will affect it in the future. Plus, if you get more funding, plus, grants, whatever that can be done that you guys work on a daily basis, always helps.
And we're hoping that better news by May as we work through this with our departments and what we can do, looking at the big items. But we want to be upfront of here's where we're at right now, if nothing changes.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like gloom and doom, as you said, Mr. Brady, but the district is doing all they can to control the expenditures that they can, to pull those levers to cut that down. So we do look financially responsible and that we're steering the ship in the right direction.
This A2 method, that's the STEB issue where we're trying to, okay.
Correct.
Yeah, so the A2 method on there, the A23 allows us to have Mr. Chapla change those numbers on there and give our own millage for that. The other one, A21 and A22, both still use the step ratio to impact our budget on that part of it. A23 is the only one that allows him to go in, and like I said, I can't give enough credit to Jake for digging up, and I think he showed, in the manual and in the school code of where he found the mechanisms to do that. The A23 or the A3 method is another option that we're not eligible for. That would be if we were in different counties and they both had the same percentage. So right now, Armstrong's at 100%, Westmoreland's or
Vice versa.
Westmoreland's at 100, Armstrong's at 50. If they were both at 50 or both at 100, we could use A3 and that would help us balance it out. And that's eliminated. So when you talk about districts that are in STEB, there's 89 of them. There's probably 40 or 50 of them that have the same percentage. They can use that. They're not really impacted by the step ratio because that allows them to balance it out. We're one of the unique ones that I'd say it's probably less than 15 that are truly seeing two different numbers, and then has a county that you're sharing with that has different values or assessed values. For instance, if you're in Armstrong County, and I'll say it's in Red Bank Valley using Clarion, there's not such a discrepancy. So they're able to balance that out a little bit more. Whereas Westmoreland, the same thing, talking with Freeport, Mr. Walker and Mr. Magnus out there, the super and the business manager. Butler County is the same way. So their SARVR jumps up just like West Leesburg did. This method allows us to use the numbers and balance it out off of the assessed values, recalculate them, and get a millage that balances out the same so that we can change what that assessed value looks like so that it gets the same taxes for the same house.
Do they use that method A2 in Freeport?
No, they haven't on there. They've done the same thing we've done over the past, and they've dealt with the same issue. I did share that. I'm guessing once this is proven and shown and it goes out, the other districts that'll be in there will go through that and switch that way. Like I said, I think the CFRS, which is the manual for the business managers, I'm not sure anybody's dug into doing that. Mr. Chapla worked hard to find that language, and it exactly says that school districts choosing method A2 must first calculate correct county assessed values pursuant to the detailed instruction provided in 672.1A2 of the school code. It's extremely important because the GFB, which is the general fund balance software, will assume proper assessed value data has been entered. So we had never changed that. They assumed we put the proper assessed value in. We were just using what the counties were giving us and not manually correcting that. When we met with Ben Haft out of PDE, talked with him on that, him and Jake worked together over the summer to figure that piece out of. That's how you balance them out with it. I'm not even sure, to be honest with you, that he knew that before we walked him through that, shared some of the code, and then he bounced it back of how do we get to fix this. Ultimately, the school code that was created that long ago had a purpose, but it just was not used correctly to be able to share. They couldn't tell us to do that, which is a little bit frustrating as a district level, that option would have been there for the last 20 years had it been needed, but nobody at the state level even told them. And we met with STEB over and over, and they had no idea that was even an option, which is crazy when you think about that in the big picture.
So if I'm reading this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, please. If we jump to A2, that's a substantial increase in millage to Leechburg and Gilpin, correct?
It'll equal out, it'll look like a jump, but the assessed value change. So remember what Mr. Chaplin said, if the assessed value goes up or down, it changes the millage. So if that assessed value goes down, the millage will go up. It may still pay the same thing. So I'll give you a prime example in that if you have a $100,000 house and it's assessed at $20,000 on one side, $40,000 on the other side, that $20,000 house would have to pay double the millage to equal the $40,000 on the other. If that makes sense.
But am I correct in currently West Leechburg's assessed value are already lower than Leechburg and Gilpin? Is that correct? Their assessed values are much lower than ours to begin with?
Correct.
I just got that from the,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, so when you look at Westmoreland, to get into kind of the ugliness of it, so when you're looking at the market value, Westmoreland assesses based off of a common level ratio of 8.88, and the pre-assessed is at 100%, whereas Armstrong's 50%. So in Armstrong, $100,000 is then pre-assessed at that 50% with the common level ratio of like 30 some. So that's where, when you look at that real estate tax bill slide, you see that assessed value comes in lower for Westmoreland just based off of the way it's calculated by that county.
So,
When we use A23, within that school code, that gives the school district the autonomy to properly address two different counties' ratios to bring a uniform assessed value based off market value of homes. So we'll be taking the market values and assessed values from each county to then correctly calculate those assessed values to be uniform across Leechburg area.
and so Freeport's having the same issue, right, with the assessed?
Yeah, they have the issue with Sarver and South Buffalo and Freeport. So South Buffalo and Freeport are both in Armstrong County, Sarver's in Butler County, so they've dealt with the same part of that. And I think to clarify on your question, to make it a little bit clearer, since 1718 on there, it's been about a 29 mil increase in West Leechburg, while there's been about a 9% decrease here. So what this is going to do is going to balance that out. It would come down to, Mr. Chappell, if you can share the numbers on a $100,000 house, what was that number if it would balance it out for an increase?
A market value home of $100,000 would potentially be around $1,100 in real estate tax bill for both counties. Whereas this past school year, under A1, it was $1,400 for Westmoreland and $1,064 in Armstrong. So that was one of the big reasons why we wanted to get this corrected, because there is that imbalance. We feel we have the solution to solve that, so there is uniformity. And as you were stating earlier, it looks like a significant millage increase, but that is because the assessed value would come in differently based off of the school district's assessed value calculation.
Okay, do we know what Freeport's hesitation is on moving to that? Why they haven't done it? The A2?
I can't personally say. I've discussed Deb properties with Mr. Walker, the business manager there, but never discussed with him the depth and detail of this.
Is there a way, and maybe I'm flying off the handle here, is there a way to go back 10 years and use these same formulas and see what the outcome would have been now? Like, see what it would have done to West Leechburg, Gilpin, Leechburg over a period of 10 years if we plug those numbers in with these two formulas. This might be the greatest thing ever, but I want to learn more about it because I'm a little confused on the aspect of, if we're looking at real estate, I can go on my phone right now and homes in West Leechburg, there's one for $430,000 right now in West Leechburg. We don't see those type of things here in Leechburg. We do see it in Gilpin.
Gilpin, yeah. You're
Yeah.
100% right.
So it's kind of, I guess I'm just a little confused how that is how we can plug those numbers in on the A2. Do you know what I'm saying? I want to understand more about this. Is there, also, I was at the board meeting, this was maybe 2 years ago, maybe, when we were discussing this first came out. And I think it was Crawford County, do they use this, A2?
I
It
was
was-
just gonna ask that.
It was mentioned there that it was great.
823 though, I don't believe, but I will get
Oh,
that
okay.
answer for you.
Because I would like to know who's using A2 and what their experiences are, because in that board meeting, they were saying that he thought it was great, and it was great the first couple years, but then it threw everything off, and everybody had increases the third
Yeah,
throughout.
the
They're having
difference
a
was they were
mess.
still using that step ratio. So
Okay.
they still had no control of it.
Got it.
So once we control this on here, it'll be balanced for eternity as long as that's what they're using. But I'll get that answer. I
Yeah.
do believe in those conversations that it was two maybe with that, but it was out of their control for that part. They weren't recalculating the assessed values to give their own, they were still using the step calculations in the sandbox that we get to put in the general fund balance software for that.
Okay.
Isn't
Is there
A1,
any
A2,
districts-
Aren't
oh,
those
sorry.
all step?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
they-
yeah.
So everything they were doing is still step?
yes.
Whereas 823 gives the school district the discretion to make the decisions.
Are they aware of that? We don't know.
Who?
That's.
I haven't spoke to Crawford
so we
Central.
don't
Yeah,
know
I have no
how it's
idea.
turned out to this day.
As I said, I'll find out before next week's board meeting. I'll dig into that part of
was literally
it.
gonna be my next
Yes.
question, but she was
And
already
I don't
aware.
know that anybody else has used that because I don't know, just us talking with the state, they didn't even know to tell us that till we dug in and drilled with them and met. So I don't think that it's a common knowledge out there. But I do know there's like 8 or 10 districts that are having the big discrepancies, such as what we are, and the rest are not. Out of the other 70 don't really have an issue with it. And as I've talked to some of our legislators, there's not enough schools complaining to them to fix anything. But I do think this was the language put in back when this bill was created, that they thought that out, but nobody knew and nobody really used it up to that part. It wasn't even impacting us until the assessed value started changing between the two counties. And that's what started throwing it out of whack.
I was gonna say, wasn't enough? It's what percentage is there of schools that have multi-county lines compared to ones that
Yes.
don't? Of course, that's the majority.
100%. Yeah, like I said, there's 89 total. We broke it down and looked at it. And I think there were only 30 that had counties that were different percentages when I dug into that last summer.
So the assessed value should be the same for all the communities and the new ones. It'll be interesting to see what the market value is. We have the number of parcels for West Leechburg, for Gilpin, for Leechburg. It'll be interesting to see what the market value was of the total number of parcels and so forth, really
Yeah.
getting a guesstimate.
So the way this works and the way this goes down, the county still provides us with the market values and their preliminary assessed values of their homes. 823 gives the district the autonomy to take what the market value of their home is using a uniform assessed value. So it's based off of your market value of your home to calculate the assessed value. So you use the lowest of the ratios. The lowest of the ratio is Westmoreland with that 8.8 for common level.
So
So
the
you're
market value
still-
comes back to last time it was assessed?
Yeah.
And West Leechburg was assessed in when last, like in the 60s or?
1973.
70.
70. And Leechburg was assessed in
95?
90.
94, okay.
So somehow, yeah, I don't want to be, this
Yeah, the big-
is
the
a
big
further.
solution to all of it is, it would work if they reassessed on there, as we've talked to Westmoreland and Armstrong County. It's not even in their plans to think about that due to the cost unless it's a recommendation of the state to do it, but none of the legislators are going to push forward to do the assessments just because of the cost. And we saw what happened in Pittsburgh with the cost of, they did the reassessment in Allegheny County. There's been so many people filing appeals and everything else with that.
You could even take almost market values from 70 and 90 and start taking inflation rates for each year to get up there also, to get true, to get a similar value.
Yeah, and you can see with the parcels we talked about, so when our revenue was staying the same and it was putting a 14% increase versus a 2% decrease on there because there were so many more houses on this side. They got a little bit of that, but it cost so much more when that step value would go up like that. And that's really what's hit the last 5 years. We've had 3 big years that it was over double digits of what those were just because of the way it was calculated through that system on there. And we believe that this system will generate a balance on that part moving forward with it. Our goal would be is to keep taxes less than what they were in 17, 18 with that, so it would balance it out somewhere. It's going to be a little bit ahead of that because we have increased the tax on that, but really trying to stay somewhere near that. You know, if, as I said, if they took my taxes back to where they're at in 17, 18, I'd be happy. So if it's went down for 7, 8 years in a row, if we balance it out, we have to be able to share that with the community of, hey, that's why you're getting a tax increase, but you've saved over the last few years as it's went to the other side of that. Any questions from anybody in the audience?
So this is a lot.
No, yeah, take it in as you think of questions. Anybody that'd like to come and sit down with us, I'm sure Mr. Chaplin and I, we can sit down and go through what that calculation looked like. If anybody thinks about it, back when this started 2 years ago, it would have been the spring of '24. I was working with Camden Porterfield, who is the chief assessor over in Westmoreland County. He put something together that was just like this. It was a 8 or 9 page document that had numbers going all over the place. I was a math person back in the day, and he had me all over the place. But basically, that's what he calculated on it in a different sense of that, trying to balance them out. And that's really where the difference is of looking at the market value for a house. What does that? How do we change those assessed values so that the millage is equal and we can give the same bill to someone no matter what side of the river they live on for the same type of house on that. But that may explain as you walk through, and it'll confuse you more as you look at it the first time, but the more you hear it, the more it makes sense to see what's actually happening
Right.
for that.
So
I think for me, I'd have to see on a whiteboard.
is it possible, well, first, is there anybody that uses A1 that we can consult with? Or A2, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure. I'll reach out
Okay.
to STEB and ask them that they or Ben Haft would be at the state would be able to share what people are using with that if he would. I can reach out to him tomorrow. I'll also reach out to Crawford County School District. I think it's Crawford Central School District on there and see what happened, which one they used it, how they used it, and what the issues were with that, just to have that data for you and the information.
And this might be a huge ask, and it may not even be possible, but I would be curious to see what it looks like if we already were using it from 10 years to now, just to see what it did. And if we can manipulate the numbers in A2, what does it look like going forward? Or is that even possible based on, since we're not really going to use the numbers given, it would be you doing is that even possible to project even? I know it's not going to be exact, but even just the possibility.
I believe it will be possible because the county should have all the assessed data on hand that goes back that far.
Yeah.
I know I've already gone back to 17, 18, I believe that's the farthest I went back. Pulled all the common level ratios from each year to show the difference between Armstrong and Westmoreland with the way it was used under A1 and our millage that was board approved those years. So I think if I get that data from the county, I should be able to possibly plug it in to the PDE, but there might be some factors that could be off, so I might be able to calculate it.
Just because
Yeah.
what that changes, when we do those calculations to get the assessed value, it has to still go into the GFB, which is our general fund balance.
Yeah.
It's a sandbox where we do the work at, and then it's impacted, like I said, we add the assessed values, the Homestead Farmstead Act, the percentage of collection. Those are the basic, we have 6 numbers we add into there. We can check and see if it'll work for previous years, or if it matters what's going on, we can try plugging those in. Some of the stuff's already set though by STEB that we have no control of, but I'll reach out and talk to Ben to see if it's something we can pull together. We'll definitely get that data to put that together.
Yeah. And
And I
maybe-
think we
oh, sorry.
first,
Go
oh, I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, Brad gave some consulting, I think, for Leesburg too, didn't he, on the?
He was just looking at the properties for trying to appeal what was going on. So what Brad did differently on that, and we did get some savings on that, when a property goes for sale, they throw them out. I got a pretty heated discussion with Steb on that a couple times on properties that they don't want to count. One of them being Lingrove Farms. When they sold it, they said that it wasn't properly advertised, so they throw it out. If a house has a dock on it, they'll try throwing it out. There was another property that sold, even when the campground sold down in Janetta, that didn't count because it wasn't properly, it was a multi-parcel. So any property that's multi-parcel, they throw out. And the big difference we saw was Armstrong was throwing a ton out. Westmoreland, there's not a ton of different properties up there. West Leechburg, it's just properties and they're all there with it. So there was a lot of discrepancies of what was happening in Gilpin and a lot of the properties. And they had a bunch of them that were not permitted. That's what we were working with Brad on. Jake will look at those again when those values come out. We'll see, are there anything we can challenge? They did approve 2 this past year. They approved 5 the year before. The 1 year, they told us it would have hurt us because it was going back 2 years. So they told us to ignore it. So they manipulate their numbers in all these different ways of what we're doing. But that was what Brad was digging into, was how do we get these added or taken off? And ultimately, he was looking if he could get them taken off of Sarver. So if we could get something taken off of West Leechburg, added to Armstrong, it tries to balance those numbers out. Unfortunately, there wasn't really anything coming off of Westmoreland because it's just lots and homes up there. There weren't any tracks or multi-parcels for the majority of them, and there are a lot less of them. So that's why it continued. As we said, there's very few, when we work with West Leechburg in our district, there's very few that are not counted, where there's a good number in Armstrong County that are not counted each year towards the overall assessed value for the county.
Was
So
there
I-
any negative or positive impact of the Wesley Kirk mill being sold?
We haven't heard, I don't know what they're doing with that. We haven't heard anything with
Clearly
that.
they're not doing it.
No, they haven't done anything.
Well, I
Like,
had to talk to you about it.
yeah, my fear is that they don't appeal it again, just because it's still deteriorating on that. And every time there's an appeal, it impacts us negatively on that. I'm hopeful that company that does that they get something moving sooner rather than later. I did reach out twice trying to get a hold of someone and didn't get any return calls or any answers on it, just trying to find out what there is. I mean, my ultimate dream on that would be they do what they did to Edgewater down in Oakmont. Let's knock it down and let's put some properties along the river there with a small, and it would bring some revenue in with that.
It seemed like they just bought it and forgot it was over there.
Yeah, so other options that we have
Literally, I
that,
live right in front of it, so like, on the Gilpin side, and it's not even, like, the bridge isn't even plowed.
No, they didn't.
Nothing.
so as we
It's not
talked
even there
about
anymore.
those revenues of increase in revenues, we talked about the church, if we get that donated, trade there. The other option that I talked about before that I'm going to dig into this spring, we do have that 1.5 acres up in West Leechburg. If we can get an assessed value on that, just to see, is it possible? The big part of what we have with that is we're up there maintaining it during the summer, the grass being cut and everything like that. I don't know if there's a buyer out there interested in it.
The school staff.
Yeah. The other picture that I look at in the big picture is there a developer that would buy all 8 acres up there? We move a baseball field and they develop it. We own the biggest track up there. I think it's right in the middle of town. I just think we need to think outside the box and look at options. Doesn't mean we need to do anything, but there could be possibilities even if we broke even. But if they added 30 or 40 cottage homes into that area and that, it would increase taxes to help us as a district with that. So just looking at it, I had talked with Senator Pittman's chief of staff, Jeremy Diaz, a couple weeks ago on that, of who they used up in Ford City, Trek Construction, and just see if there would be any interest. It would give us an option to look at as a district with that. So there's options on what we can do. I think it's going to be my job over the next year or two to continue to try to explore options of how do we increase revenues while we're maintaining and looking at our expenditures on that.
Now, there could be something on where the school used to be, but not touching the baseball field, correct?
Well, we would look, if someone would pay enough money for it, it might be worth looking at that option.
I don't want to even explore that yet.
It's my job to give you options.
I
You
fought
don't
for
have to do
baseball field a
anything.
lot over the
Yeah,
years,
no.
so that's why I'm
I can
saying.
assure you, if we put a new ball field in it, we won't deal with what we know.
If you find a good spot for it, that we already own.
I have a thought, I have a thought.
But
I'm
we
not-
don't have that right now.
No, and that's long-term. Like I said,
Right,
it's as
right,
we look long-term,
absolutely.
we're just looking to give the board options of what we do as we look at that.
So I think like, there's a lot on my mind here, so excuse me if this is off, but I think if you ask anybody in Gilpin, West Leechburg, and you ask them about their taxes, it's high. They're gonna say it's high. But where I'm confused is, are they really high or is it perceived based off millage? Because their assessed value is already lower. Example, a house I just looked at in West Leechburg, $6,900 in taxes. My nephew's house in Gilpin, same dimensions, all that, $8,000. So if we start comparing everybody's tax bills, we can't really use mills to look at that because the assessed values are already much, much different in each spot. Is there even a way to, is there a rundown of tax bills in all the areas so we can just kind of even take a general look? Is that even possible to do without names or whatever? But I mean, I know you could probably go online and maybe go, because my reasoning due to this is a huge decision.
100%.
And we really need to make sure, is this going to be a permanent solution or is this going to put us back in a horrible situation in 4 years where now the swings here at Leechburg or the swings over in Gilpin, and they're the ones that are off tremendously. And no offense to West Leechburg, I agree, it's atrocious everywhere. The second thing is we have a real budget problem here that doesn't even include any of that. So what if we gather all this data with the tax bills and we go back 10, if we can look in the future, if that's possible. I really think that maybe we need to even get like a STEB committee and also have a community committee with residents from Leechburg, Gilpin, West Leechburg, where we can take this data, because hopefully people are watching, but like we're having these meetings and nobody's coming. But the second we raise a tax bill, this auditorium is going to be full. So I really think a lot of this needs to go to the community and educating them on all of this and what the possible precautions are. I would love it if another district's using A1 and we can even ask them what their experiences are like, you know, because this might be the perfect solution. We don't know. A2, yeah. We don't know if this is the perfect, and I hate to just do something without having all this data to really compare. Just because, again, I mean, we don't know what's the future. We don't know what it's going to do. Either way, really. But this is a big, big decision. And going back to the budget, if the board can start thinking, I know we have a budget finance committee, but this is only, you know, my third meeting. I would like to finalize committees next week, and I really think the budget finance committee also we need to start consulting together and working with community members, maybe I think if we go back to a STEB committee with the community as well, we have representatives from each part. There's 2 in West Leechburg right now that would be phenomenal, that have really looked at the ins and outs of these things also. But maybe getting the community committee along with our committee and getting these breakdowns so we can kind of see and consulting with other districts in the same problem, and maybe they can get their data together too, and just kind of we can compare and contrast. As far as the budget, is there a way, this might sound crazy too, but if you look at the overall picture, revenue's going nowhere, but our expenditures are going by millions. That's just not sustainable, and raising taxes every year forever is not sustainable to residents. Is there a way we can get a breakdown of all these codes and where everything's going to them? And I know these are like generalized, but like the other purchases, exactly what's going here, what's going there. It's just so we can kind of, and I'm sure the previous board has already done this, but now we also have new eyes, and sometimes things get overlooked. So maybe there's other areas where we can try to trim some fat without affecting, staff and students, just the overall.
Just to add on that, we can definitely provide that to you this week so that you have it to look at before we meet again with that. And I just want to point out, the biggest part we have right now, 69% of our budget is just on salary and benefits alone, which is set. So that's
Yeah.
where we need to fight back and where
Yeah.
we bringing up at the IU. I know Mr. Chaplain's talking about healthcare, 450, 300,000. We're looking at $750,000 increase over the last 2 years
Right.
alone. It's unsustainable. So that's where we were looking at what options can we drop it and what options do we have for other healthcare
Yeah.
providers to
And I
go
love
with.
your ideas. Your ideas are great, and I think we really need to do more
Yeah, but I
consulting
think if
with
you guys see all those, we can definitely explain
Yeah.
that so you see where that's coming
Because
from.
if you look at any business in general, their highest bucket is salaries and benefits, which that's fine. So now we got to look at other things, other places, which I'm sure, again, previous boards have done. But, sometimes just a fresh set of eyes just to kind of come over and see. And maybe there's none, but I just would like to get a feel for what that may look like. We definitely need to talk more on this. This is a big deal.
We can surely do that. What you see in these 5-year forecasts, obviously, you just see revenues and expenditures, but behind that, there's a lot of detail.
Yeah,
So if you want to be bored by it, I can definitely bore you getting into the meat and potatoes of
yeah,
it.
and maybe like we can
Because
even,
it clearly breaks out your salary benefits. It breaks down all
Yeah.
that stuff. So we can really go through to see what the high-end items are and what fat can be trimmed.
Yeah, and when you look at it, we're still as big as what it was before. 70% of our budget is wages and benefits, close to it. You got busing, you got utilities, you got a lot of basics that we don't have a lot of control over.
That service,
As a board, we maybe control 10% of the budget.
It's less
than
that.
Is about all.
I also want to make it very clear, with the salaries and the benefits, I would not, it's well-deserved. We have amazing staff, so I just don't want anyone to think that that's where I'm focusing in on. I just simply want to see, it's already known and understood that that's a huge bucket in any business. So I just I'm not even so concerned about that, just maybe, other lines. And I know healthcare is going to get atrocious.
Just to add, and this is one more thing that hasn't been spoke about here, when you look at Peasers, this will go back all the way to Governor Ridge when this was impacted greatly. But the pension was created that the district put 7.5%, the state put 7.5%, and the employee put 7.5%. He put some years that the district was putting 1%, they were putting none, and now we're up to 33, 34% of that. So when you think of that number alone, and what happened was the state couldn't figure it out. It was at the state level for 2 years. Legislators were beating their head off the wall. They couldn't figure out. Who'd they dump it on? The 9 of you right here. They said, well, we can't figure it out. Too bad. Everybody in the state's going to pay it. So it's every school district. It's not just here. But when you think of that number, when you look at our salaries, and then we go through, and it's a broken system with when you have districts paying, 25% more than what we pay our teachers here for some of the districts out east or up north of us on the big districts. The state's on the hook for still 7.5% to 10%. They reimburse part of that with it, but we're still looking at 18, 19% that we're paying versus that 7.5%. If we had that 10% back and was part of that study that was done for the unfair funding, that was the difference of it. Because you can't make that up, but every school district in the state has been quiet about that because it's just become numb to that cost. But that's another major impacting number that goes into the benefits of that the tax base has taken on, which is much harder in a smaller community like ours.
Yeah.
It could be spread out in bigger districts where there's more business and more revenue coming in. It makes it really hard here how to handle that. So that's another piece of why that number is so high as well.
Yeah.
For reference, I believe our Peasers payment for next year will be a little bit over $2 million, but we get a portion back through state subsidy, so that would be a little bit of $1 million. So, you're still offsetting $1 million towards Peasers payment on.
would anybody be opposed to having that committee and meeting with, state reps, those kind of things within that?
No, we've been doing that. I would love for board members to join me with the state reps.
I want to join for sure.
Yes.
And then, the reason I'm recommending a community, a couple, people to spearhead it in the community is to get the word out, so that we can educate them more. Because that seems to do the trick when you have a community member post on Facebook that, hey, this is going to happen this day and that time. But getting some maybe liaisons in the communities in all 3 spots to join in with our committee and looking at all this for education purposes so they can see for themselves what's happening.
Yeah, and I agree. It's disappointing to see we hold a public
Yeah.
meeting like this and the community members will be on Facebook posting what they want, but they don't show up to
Right.
really talk about that. Yes, I'd be happy to add anybody to it. I think the big picture and the reality is the community as a whole has to understand we haven't raised taxes since 1718.
Right.
We have to raise taxes. It's not on just the board there. I think in order for us to function in society,
Right.
my taxes have went up every year in the district neighboring here. It continues going. It's part of life with that. Unfortunately, we didn't do that up to this point, so it's going to be a higher jump with that. But ultimately, costs are not projecting to go down anywhere soon.
Right.
We're going to continue to work and dig and fight with what we have to get those costs down to increase revenues. But that's a added piece. Anybody in the community, the more I'd be happy to go.
And this right here is why I think having representatives in the community that can educate and take that back, because I'm assuming most people aren't going to understand that part, and your phone's going to be ringing off the hook, and it's going to be bad. So just
Yeah, we'd have to
taking
define
more back.
size of the committee, attendance of meetings and so forth. Somebody couldn't come to one meeting and then not show up for 3 months or so. I mean, it's sort of like we did committees before, we to sit down and figure out what.
Yeah, and I think, when there's time there, I think if we set those meetings up to get them in, we need the people who are going to be involved with that to
Right.
inform them, but we also need members of the community who are going to go back and share it with their neighbors. Because if they don't, and, the other part, I'll be honest with those members, got to be able to correct the other members. I don't care, anybody can, as I've said since I've been here for 10 years, you don't have to agree with me. You can pick it apart, just say the truth of what happened, and we'll stand up for why we did a decision. We can't have different avenues that are true or untrue on what they're doing and how they're doing that. So I think the more people who are informed, the less inaccurate information will be shared with that so that we can get everybody on the same page of understanding.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy. It's just like everyone else. And I'll be honest, we're on the chopping block of the state. They've continued. They've been very clear. They don't want small school districts. They don't want us to exist. So they're going to continue coming after us every avenue they can. So we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and really fight back of how can we take care of what we control and how do we fix the other things. And I think we've put some great pieces in for that of trying to get some people back, trying to build what we have here. And I think it's going to continue that to build the community up, because everything with the community starts with the school. And I think we need to make sure that the community is aware of that on that part.
Yeah. Absolutely. So going back to just committees in general, I would like to finalize those next meeting. So if there's any board members that feel they can't commit, no problem, no questions asked, but
Yeah, I got a couple emails from a couple of you of who wanted to be on where, or if you want, I'll put those into the chart for next week. We can publicly talk about if anybody wants to change anything, but we can formalize those and set a date for finance next week. We'll get you the information that we can by next week so that you have that information in your hands to start, but then we can start putting those committees together.
okay.
And for any members that would like further detail into the budget or into A1 versus A2, Dr. Keebler's door and I are open to have that discussion.
Yeah, for sure.
You can put me anywhere you want to.
I think you're already on a bunch of them.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
All right.
Jake, I just like to thank you guys for the packet, for all the time you put into this also.
Thank you,
Really
Mr. Brady.
great to see.
Yeah, no, we thank the 9 of you working with us. Like I said, it's not going to be easy, but we'll work together, get whatever details we can, and continue to, like I said, we got to pour sleeves up and get into the dirt and figure out what's needed and how we fix this moving forward, so we have a plan.
Right. Yeah, thank you very much, and sorry for all the requests. If it's no hurry, but we gotta
Yeah,
clearly
don't
get this quick.
anybody, if anybody feels, don't hesitate asking questions on that. That's my job, is to inform you to make those decisions. Nobody should ever be making a decision when they're uninformed on any of that part of it. So bring the questions, keep getting it. If I can't get the answer, I'll find it.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Any questions, public? Okay, we're gonna adjourn the meeting at 8:08. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, motion to adjourn.
So motion.
Second.
Okay, we're gonna end the meeting at 8:08 PM. Thank you. Motion passed.